Today's topic is memories of great monks, and we are going to be spotlighting Swami Lokeshwarananda, who was the founder of the Narendrapur Ashrama and the former head of the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, and Swami Smaranananda, the present president of the Ramakrishna Order. Swami Lokeshwarananda was born in 1909 and passed away in December 31st, 1998. We see how his family life intersected with the divine play and playground of Sri Ramakrishna and Sarada Devi. One day while I was in pilgrimage in India, the Swami shared with me, I was born in Bangladesh. Sri Ramakrishna came to my village on elephant and palanquin. He passed by my house because there is only one road that enters the village. He added, I mentioned in M, the apostle and evangelist, as the tall Kanai. Lokeshwarananda ji continued, when I was a child, my family had relatives in Kolkata, so we would go there. I remember we bathed in Mother's Ghat near the Udbodhan, where she stayed. I remember the people putting their hands to their lips when she would come out, but I never actually remember seeing her. But I saw Radhu, Sri Sarada Devi's mentally challenged niece, whose mad behavior served to keep Mother's spiritual consciousness at the throat level, never up to the highest chakra, except on rare occasions. She, Radhu, had such grace. When she was ill, she went to Benares. Someone said to her, well, if you die in Benares, it is a sacred place. You will be liberated. And Radhu replied, what? Jairambati is the most sacred place. I will go there to die. And she did. I saw her in Jairambati. Swami Lokeshwarananda ji was initiated by Swami Shivananda, Mahapurush Maharaj. He joined the order at Deogar, Vidyapith in 1933 and served it as its headmaster. Then he received sannyas from Swami Virajananda in 1944, who was the sixth president of the Ramakrishna Order. Lokeshwarananda ji served at Mayavati and the Cherrapunji ashramas and also performed relief work in Burma and East Bengal, now Bangladesh. He founded the Narendrapur Center in 1946 in a very humble way and developed it into a huge educational complex that we see today. Swami Lokeshwarananda became the head of the Institute of Culture from 1973 to 1998. And he showed tremendous bravery during the communist uprising in the 1970s, when workers went on strike and threatened to kill the head and the staff to meet their demands. During that harrowing period, Swami Lokeshwarananda insisted on sitting at his office desk upstairs at the Institute, near the window, unperturbed, but in plain sight of anyone who wished to target him. Thus, with his firm resolve, he brought that crisis situation under control. The Swami authored several books in English and Bengali and translated into English some of the major Upanishads. He traveled extensively in India, and in 1984, he was invited to Russia along with Swami Swahananda, who initiated a large number of Russian devotees, and also the Far East and the West. The Swami attracted devotees and friends like a magnet with his affection, his charisma, and his boundless energy. I first met Swami Lokeshwarananda during his week-long stay at the Santa Barbara Center after his trip to Russia. He was relaxed at our convent and shared many reminiscences about his guru and Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples at our dining room table. The direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna saw the living presence of Ramakrishna in the shrine. Swami Lokeshwarananda related to us. Thakur used to like his beetles softened. One day, Mahapurush Maharaj tasted his beetle prasad offered in the temple and noticed it was hard. He wept. What good am I? I cannot even see that you are properly served. He went to the kitchen and said to the pujari, I will serve him, Sri Ramakrishna, his beetle, from now on. You don't know how to serve. The pujari, realizing his mistake, begged Mahapurush Maharaj's forgiveness and promised to be more careful in the future. Swami Lokeshwarananda shared, there was a photo of Swamis Vivekananda, Turiyananda, Brahmananda, and Shivananda that Mahapurush Maharaj used to go to every day and address. To Vivekananda, he would say, I am trying to fulfill your ideals you have laid down. To Maharaj Swami Brahmananda, I miss you. When he came to his own photo, he said, who is this? Why are you here among these great souls? To serve them. The direct disciples had a power in both life and death. Swami Lokeshwarananda related, at the Allahabad Mutt, Swami Vijnanananda asked Beni, his attendant, to never marry. But after Vijnanananda's passing, Beni's relatives tried to persuade him by saying that Vigyan Maharaj would never know. So they all agreed that Beni would leave the ashrama one night and they would meet him outside the gate. But as Beni approached the gate, Vigyan Maharaj was sitting there. So he went to the gate on the other side, thinking that would be all right. But Vigyan Maharaj was sitting there. When Beni's relatives asked what had happened, he told them, and they said, oh, you must have seen a ghost. So 2 nights after that, he tried again. But again, Vigyan Maharaj was sitting there by the gate. Thereafter, Beni said, never again. And he always remained celibate. Later, people used to revere him. We also understand the power of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples when we have the holy company of their disciples. One evening after supper, Swami Lokeshwarananda shared, it is so silent here, meaning the convent grounds in Santa Barbara. This silence, he said, is more than just absence of sound. One can hear the pranava, meaning the pranava Om. I asked Swami Lokeshwananda why monks such as he reminded me of my own Guru's presence, as if the direct disciples of Ramakrishna's direct disciples were from one mold, the same mold for Mahapurush Maharaj as Sri Ramakrishna. He responded, yes. As you meditate on your Ishta, the qualities of that Ishta will transform you, not only your spiritual personality, but also your physical personality. You will not be the same person. At times, Swami Lokeshwarananda revealed intimate details. For example, he disclosed his Guru's inner spiritual attitude. He said, Mahapurush Maharaj looked upon Thakur, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, as mother, the divine mother, and then shared that Swami Vijnanananda, what Swami Vijnanananda intimated about his interior relationship with Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Sarada Devi. Thakur was naughty, he said, but mother is strong. Swami Lokeshwarananda also shared with us his own intimate connection with the divine. One should not think in meditation, he said, that he, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, is seated facing you. No, if you are one, he is within you, seated in the same direction. You are one with him. Another time, one's relationship with the Lord should be as one's dhoti one wears at home, full of holes, he laughed, inferring to an intimacy one should have with one's chosen ideals. But he went on, but when one goes out, it is a clean new cloth, meaning one should keep one's inner life hidden. And then he disclosed his present state. It is very hard for me to tell the difference between matter and spirit. Where is that line? I met Swami Lokeshwarananda again at Thousand Island Park in 1995, when we, along with heads of centers and other speakers, were participants and guests of Swami Adishwananda at his 100th anniversary celebrations of the Inspired Talks. And for the last time in 1997 in India, as Swami Lokeshwarananda's guest at a special international conference on Vedanta at the Institute of Culture, where I also met Dr. Andrew Ford, a former professor at TCU, who was another participant and who has spoken at our Vedanta Center several times. During this trip to Calcutta, the Swami and I had a chance to talk privately. Swami Lokeshwarananda began by describing his initiation from Swami Shivananda, the direct disciple of Ramakrishna. He said, when I was studying in Calcutta, my professor told me, you must go to Bellarmat and meet Mahapurush Maharaj. Mahapurush was the name Swami Vivekananda gave Swami Shivananda when he learned that though for a short period he was married against his will, he had had no physical relations with his wife. What do you say, Vivekananda stated when he heard this? That is the characteristic of a Mahapurusha, a great soul. You are certainly one. Lokeshwarananda Ji continued, I got a bicycle and rode 3 miles, not knowing the way, and finally arrived. I went to the stairs of the old shrine at Bellarmat, and as I climbed the first step, Mahapurush Maharaj, whose room was right next to the shrine, came out on his veranda and called to me, you have come here. So I went. Then after coming to Bellarmat for 1 or 2 years, the monks there asked me if I had received initiation. I said no. They said, you must go and ask. So I went to him, the Swami stated. He was in his room sitting. When I came and asked for initiation, Mahapurush Maharaj said, you must beg. See how swiftly a yearning devotion unfolds when triggered by a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. With tears in his eyes, Swami Lokeshwarananda continued. So I placed my hands together and begged. Right then and there, Mahapurush Maharaj gave the mantra. We are not so formal, Swami Lokeshwarananda said. He gave the mantra and I repeated it. Then a half hour later, Mahapurush Maharaj went to the shrine room to give formal initiation to some other persons. The direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna had their own way of initiating, based on their deep insight and intuition. Swami Lokeshwarananda related, a friend of mine wanted initiation from Mahapurush Maharaj, so I took him to him. And Maharaj said to me, "What mantra have I given you?" I kept silent, he said. "What? You will not tell even your own guru?" he said. I thought I should not repeat it in front of my friend. That is why, the Swami explained to me. Then I repeated it to Mahapurush Maharaj, and he turned around and I repeated it to my friend, the same mantra. And that is how my friend was initiated. Later, Swami Lokeshwarananda confided, "I had wanted a mantra from Mother," meaning Sri Sarada Devi. "Once I dreamt I was coming down the stairs in the old Mat building to Swamiji's room, carrying Mother, who was just like a little girl. She gave me a mantra at that time." When I went to Jayrambati, Lokeshwaranandaji continued, I had a vision of Mother. She appeared on the road. She looked like a village woman. I looked at her with head cocked, and she looked at me. Suddenly the thought came to me, is she really the Mother or just some village woman? But when that thought came, she turned and walked away. I followed her to the Mat building and asked the Swami there, "Has some woman walked by?" "No, no woman has come this way." Swami Lokeshwananda then said, "I should have fallen at her feet. I have this regret." How did Swami Lokeshwananda study the scriptures? After joining the order in Deogar, Swami Lokeshwananda studied under Swami Jagadananda, a great Vedanta scholar and translator of Swami Sardananda's comprehensive biography, Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master. Lokeshwanandaji said, Swami Jagadananda would say, "Now what is this Upanishad trying to say?" Which is a very good method. Swami Lokeshwananda explained, but I did not feel satisfied when he answered my questions. Then one day I asked Swami Satprakashananda, yet another great Vedanta scholar who founded the Vedanta Society of St. Louis, how should I study the scriptures? Should I go to someone? No, the Swami said, you study by yourself. You yourself will get the answers to your questions. Swami Lokeshwananda then reminisced, I did not study under Mahapurush Maharaj. I tried to serve him. Whatever he asked me to do, I would say yes, even though I didn't know how to do it. Once he asked me to massage his feet. I tried, but he said, you are good for nothing. Your hands are too soft. At another time, Swami Lokeshwananda said, Mahapurush Maharaj used to crane his neck in order to see me, even when there was a room full of people. Later, I wondered why I did not go to him and ask some question or massage his feet. Now I do that in my imagination. That is better. It's a kind of meditation. During his stay in Santa Barbara and this trip to India, Swami Lokeshwananda shared stories and his association with some of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna. Aside from his guru, he met Swamis Akhandananda, Subodhananda, and Abhedananda, M, the compiler of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and Ramlal, Sri Ramakrishna's nephew, who served the master and was the Kali temple priest at Dakshineshwar. Many of our great monks have a quick wit and irrepressible sense of humor. Swami Lokeshwananda told us, Vivekananda had a knack for coining names for others. Swami Akhandananda he called one whose nose looks like a sword. In this connection, the Swami shared, once Swami Akhandananda sent a sweet to the monks that was 100 kilograms. It was burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. When he asked the monks how they liked it, they weren't very flattering. Swami Akhandananda called Madhavananda, who later became the general secretary and the president of the order. "What do you say?" he asked. "It's wonderful," Madhavananda answered. Swami Akhandananda was pleased. "You see," he said to others, "he knows," he told the monks. Later, someone asked Madhavananda, "How could you say it was wonderful?" "Did I say it was good?" Madhavananda replied. How did the direct disciples train the young monks, you might ask? Swami Lokeshwarananda shared, "When I was the attendant to Swami Akhandananda at Bellarmine, he told me, 'When I ring, you must be there and come at once.' So one time I was writing and reading a book when he rang. So I put the book upside down with the pages open. But when Swami Akhandananda came out of his room and saw the book, he said, 'You were a college student? Don't you know that it's bad for a book's binding to be treated in this way?' He was very meticulous about detail. He also trained with encouragement and affection. Once someone made a dish which he liked. He asked what spices we used. When the cook told him, Akhandananda said, 'Wasn't there one more? The spice of love?' Swami Akhandananda would stay at Bellarmine, but then he would want to return to Sargachi, the Sargachi ashram. He would say, 'The trees are crying. You are so far away. Who will water us while you are there at Bellarmine?' He must have had that yogic insight, I suggested to Yogeshwaranandaji. Yes, the Swami concurred. Once when he arrived in Calcutta and saw the tall buildings there, he said, 'I see so many skulls of the poor people,' meaning belonging to those workers who had built the buildings. I asked, 'Did you ever see Swami Akhandananda in any spiritual mood?' He was a great conversationalist, the Swami shared, but suddenly he would withdraw. His eyes would become completely indrawn. His eyes and the eyes of Mahapurush Maharaj were beautiful, he said, very moist. They both shared the spiritual attainment. Swami Lokeshwarananda had undoubtedly heard many stories of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and the direct disciples. But since time was short, he ended our time together with a beautiful story of Holy Mother. Bharata Maharaj, Mother's attendant, had a bicycle and used to run errands for Mother, the Swami began. He felt bad that other monks were going for tapasya, and he wasn't. So one day he asked Mother, 'Should I go for meditation?' 'Tell me,' she said, 'who is it they are meditating upon?' Meaning herself. Bharata Maharaj understood immediately. Swami Smaranananda was born in 1929. He is the president of the Ramakrishna order. He was initiated by Swami Shankarananda, the disciple of Swami Brahmananda, and he joined the Ramakrishna order in 1952. I first met him in India in 1979, when he was in charge of Sarada Peeth, an educational complex near Bellarmine. When I met him again in 1997 in India, and then again in May 2000 at the Santa Barbara Convent, he was General Secretary of the Order. Then in 2007, in India, he became Vice President. Swami Smaranananda was elected the 16th President of the Ramakrishna Order in July 2017. In 1997, when I went to India alone, I would sit at his desk and watch how he worked. I asked him, how do you manage to do all this work as the General Secretary and stay so calm? What's your secret? Swami Smaranananda answered, there is a verse in the Yoga Sutras that says, with discrimination, the mind goes in a stream toward God. Without discrimination, following lower tendencies, the mind goes in a stream towards sin. So, he said, try to catch the stream toward God. All the time, one must pay attention. He then described his inner attitude of a jnani. Do as if you are not doing. Do as if you are not doing. Then his general approach to work was, in his words, try to make the world a better place, but don't expect to change the world. Do not expect perfection. Do what you can to surrender the results. This must be applied to one's life. We read many things, but few care to apply. Look at the world with humor, he said. Ramakrishna did. Christ did. As we were talking, suddenly there was a loud cheer coming from a group of monks in a room above the mission office. India won, he smiled and then explained. India was playing Pakistan in soccer. So I let the young monks watch the game upstairs on the only television in the mott. The Swami's sympathetic understanding for the needs of the young monks touched me deeply. Not only that, when a devotee came in to his office to greet the Swami and leave pranami, he placed the pranami in his desk drawer. This is for the servants during the holidays, he shared with me. Though General Secretary of a large organization, he had such a loving concern and consideration for others, no matter how humble their job. Swami Smaranananda then shared how he viewed his role as General Secretary. It is Guru Maharaj's grace, meaning Sri Ramakrishna's grace, that one can work without attachment and can carry the mantle of work of this job. In other words, with the greater responsibility of the Ramakrishna order comes his grace. The Swami obviously felt that. That grace was undoubtedly predicated on his heartfelt understanding of a reminiscence he later shared with my sisters and me during his time at the Santa Barbara convent in 2000. He related, once a sadhu asked Swami Shankarananda, disciple of Swami Brahmananda and seventh president of the Ramakrishna order, what are we to do after you are gone? What will happen to the order? Swami Shankarananda became very grave and then said, whose order is it? Another day, Swami Smaranananda talked about how to deal with the ups and downs in life. About one sadhu I had met convalescing in the Arogya Bhavan care facility for aged sadhus, who used to have an active life and was now confined and somewhat depressed. He said, he has not adjusted to that. We have to accept the fact that throughout life, we cannot always be active. The mind must learn to accept. We have to be steady through all the ups and downs of life, like the Stita Pragya, that person of steady wisdom. There is no other way. The Swami continued, I once told Swami Nityaswarupananda, the former head and founder of the Institute of Culture, I do not believe in work. What? He said. I said, work follows me wherever I go. As General Secretary, Swami Smarnananda daily met with his assistant secretaries to troubleshoot and resolve various issues arising in the Ramakrishna mission centers throughout India and the world. How do you deal with the various opinions of others? I asked. Yes, many opinions will be there, he said, and some very forceful. So I have to say, what is the objective? What are the points leading to the situation? Like that. It won't do to get angry. So many problems I have to face in the day. I would be angry all the time. You must be very sweet-natured, I offered. No, I used to be short-tempered, he candidly admitted. How did you get over it? I asked. I don't know, the Swami said. It just happened. The secret is, don't be critical of others. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Yes, I have to make decisions and about people, but let it go. And I also have to scold. This advice, coming from the General Secretary of the Order, Central Executive Officer of all the Order's activities in India and the world, made a deep impression, because he showed through his actions that he had assimilated a marked equanimity of mind. Swami Smarnananda then broadened his remarks to include his view of practical Vedanta. Scholars can talk on Vedanta, but we have to assimilate it. Practical Vedanta, what is that? Renunciation? It's not woman and gold. Then what is it? Give up thinking that this world is real. Give up thinking that this world is real. Then that realization will help you to become the witness. We must be constantly vigilant in order to attain freedom, he said. I asked, have you ever felt that you would like to give up administrative work and go into solitude? He replied, when I joined the order in Bombay, I was made Pujari. Then I moved to Calcutta and was made manager of Advaita Ashram. Then 6 months president of Advaita Ashram. So from almost the beginning, I have had an administrative role. When I left Bombay, they had to replace me with 2 swamis. Swami Smarnananda then stated his fundamental conviction. If I did not believe this was Thakur's work, Sri Ramakrishna's work, then I would not be here. This mission is a great experiment. The sages of old found realization by living alone. But Swamiji's, Swami Vivekananda's practical Vedanta is different. It is possible to practice it here and now. These words made a deep impression. The Swami then quoted Emerson. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. The next day, Swami Smarnananda shared about his pre-monastic days. During World War II, a bomb was dropped in Madras. So many people left the city. He went to school in Bombay and then to Maharashtra, where his parents relocated, and then back to Bombay on his own. He openly shared that he used to watch 1 movie a week, an honesty and guilelessness that endeared him to me. How a monk, nun, or devotee becomes attracted to Vedanta is the story of how Sri Ramakrishna uses his Yoga Maya to attract his devotees. When I asked Swami Smaranananda what inspired him to join the Ramakrishna order, he answered, it was several things. I read a book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich, which explained three things are necessary. One must have an ideal, number one. Second, one must have the determination to achieve that ideal. And three, one must have the full knowledge of it in order to achieve it. He said, that started a process of vichara in myself. What was a worthwhile goal? And I began to search for the answers independently of anyone. He then shared that sometimes he used to walk to the Worli beach in Bombay, quietly sit on the huge rocks there and watch the sunset. One day while sitting there, he thought to himself, these rocks are so big, the sea is so vast, the sky looks infinite, then what am I? A little speck on the surface of the earth. Why give so much importance to it? Suddenly, something within him opened up, and the answer flashed in his mind. It is true that you look like a speck on the surface of the earth, the voice said, but within you there is a great presence, which is greater than this universe. This thought came so forcefully that he felt someone was uttering those words into his ears, and it lodged itself firmly in his mind. At last, a friend took him to the Bombay Ramakrishna mission, and he fell in love with it. He became close with the Swamis there and bought Thoughts of Power by Swami Vivekananda, which he would read on the bus going to and from his home. On the train going home, he became so absorbed, he was oblivious of the people around him. Such was the Swami's extraordinary journey toward becoming a monk in the Ramakrishna order. I asked him, yesterday you talked about renouncing the world as real. How can one renounce the ego as real? His answer was simple. We cannot. So let it remain as the servant or friend or beloved of the Lord. He continued, the waves of the mind are very difficult to silence. They are the waves that stem from emotion, thought, volition. The emotions are the most difficult to still, he said. Philosophers can go on talking about many Vedanta principles, but emotions go deep. Those we must still to realize the truth of Vedanta. To stop the one single remaining wave, we must strive for Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He asserted Sri Ramakrishna could stop all waves except that of Mother Kali. And Todapuri, his sannyas guru, took a piece of glass and pierced his forehead. That is the center where form merges into formlessness. But in this connection, Gargi, Marie-Louise Burke, author of the 5-volume New Discovery series on Swami Vivekananda in the West, was also staying at Bellarmine with me, much beloved by all the senior monks, and later shared that day. Someone asked Swami Smaranananda how to give up the ego. He answered that at the time of sannyas, his sannyas guru, Swami Shankarananda, said, from now on, no more ego. And that was that. It made such a deep impression, the ego fell away. I then asked Swami Smaranananda about his time in Advaita Ashram at Mayavati, which Vivekananda established. Is there a particular classical path of Advaita Vedanta followed there? No, he said. We have not followed Swamiji's plan, meaning Vivekananda's plan. Then he elaborated, what is practiced and followed? There is no photo or external worship, but monks do meditate on the form of God there. Then he suggested what could be introduced to practice Advaita Vedanta. Vipassana is a method, he said, watching the mind, mindfulness. Second, vichara, discrimination between the real and the unreal. Third, an inwardness. A glimpse of Brahman, he said, can come at any time. I then asked, is there one prescribed path for the Jnana Marga? Is it neti neti, the path of negation? All is not, God alone is. What happens if the same aspirant also practices iti iti, the path of affirmation? God is all. No, the Swami explained. Hanuman said, O Rama, sometimes I feel you are the master and I am your servant. Sometimes I meditate on you as the whole and I am a part. But when I have the knowledge of reality, I see that I am you and you are I. The next time I saw Swami Smardananda in India was 2007 in Chennai. At that time, he was vice president of the order and an initiating guru. We talked for an hour, and he shared the initiation ceremony that takes place in Chennai. First, before being seated with the candidates, he offers flowers in the universal temple there and to the holy photos in the basement room. Then the candidates repeat a prayer with their flower offering, and that is put on a tray and placed at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna. Then a monk reads out in English what Sarda Devi and the direct disciples once said about the meaning of initiation. A break takes place, then the mantra is given, and then one by one, the candidates kneel before the vice president and repeat the mantra 3 times. Then after another break, a book of meditation instructions, written in about 10 different languages, is read out and passed out to the candidates. Then the Guru Puja takes place, wherein each candidate offers flowers at his feet, and he blesses them with the sacred relics of Holy Mother. This was such a special moment in my Indian pilgrimage, a kind of darshan. Though each initiating guru has their own method handed down by their guru and their guru's guru, leading right up to Sri Ramakrishna or Holy Mother, initiation itself ushers the disciple into the Ramakrishna Vedanta lineage, a rebirth, as it were, tying them with a golden thread to the feet of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Sarda Devi, and Swami Vivekananda, and thus protecting and initiating their spiritual journey towards liberation. The last time I was with Swami Smardananda was when he came to the United States and stayed at the Santa Barbara Convent Center. To me, he epitomizes a monk with great intellect, willpower, and heart, whose teachings go straight to the heart. Once he shared stories about some monks who were not so well known, but whose simple, loving nature gained the love and respect of all who came into contact with them. One such was Swami Shiveshananda, known as Dwaraka Maharaj. He was a disciple of Swami Shivananda, and he lived most of his monastic life at Bellarmine. Mahapurush Maharaj lived upstairs in the old Mat building where Swami Vivekananda spent the last days of his life. In the courtyard below his room still stands the mango tree, which was there during Swami Vivekananda's time, along with the jackfruit tree and other plants. Mahapurush Maharaj instructed Dwaraka Maharaj to see the courtyard was kept clean of all leaves and debris. Dwaraka Maharaj had read about Shabari, who lived an ascetic life in the forest. Shabari heard that Sri Rama would pass by her hermitage, and so she waited years to have his darshan. At last he came, and Shabari's dream was fulfilled. Similarly, Swami Smaranananda explained, Dwaraka Maharaj was also watchful that leaves did not litter the courtyard. As soon as a leaf would fall, he would rush to remove it. Thus his whole mind was given to his guru, Mahapurush Maharaj. I have seen him reciting those Bengali verses in the Ramayana, he said, that deal with the episode of Shabari, tears pouring down from his eyes. In his room was a picture of old Shabari, which Swamin had given him. His was a great example of how an ordinary act can also become a practical spiritual action. In this way, Swami Smaranananda's life is one that touches our mind and heart and inspires us throughout our spiritual life. I would like to end with a guided meditation to concretize within ourselves these wonderful teachings that we hear about the direct disciples of Ramakrishna, Saradadevi, Vivekananda. So let us begin by sitting straight in our chair or on the floor, spine straight. This is a meditation on Godness. Let us begin by taking in 3 deep breaths, breathing in deeply and exhaling completely. God is everything. Everything we see, feel, hear, and touch is a manifestation of God. The sun, moon, grass, trees, people, things, everything of this world is a manifestation of God. Kabir sings, all that exists art thou. All that we perceive is. Everything has a presence, and that presence is God. Try to feel the presence of God. What does that mean? Everything I feel is you, my beloved. I feel my body as your temple. I feel your presence pervading my body. You abide within me, the breath of my breath. I feel the sensation of my feet touching the floor. You are there. I feel your presence. In the sensation of my hands touching is your presence. You are there, touching me. Everything I feel, touch, see, taste, hear is you. The ceiling above my head, the floor beneath my feet, the room, the people in the room, everything that is you. Try to feel the presence of your beloved as the presence of everything. With eyes closed, feel the body is. The ceiling is. The room is. My beloved. Beyond the room, the garden is. The street is. The city is. The country is. The earth is thou, my beloved. Feel the godness, the presence of your beloved that pervades everything. That presence is the ocean of consciousness in whom we live, move, and have our being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.